what's your take on Alonso's comments that a return to the Indy 500 is unlikely just because of the Aeroscreen?
Well, there's no sugarcoating it. They're asinine. They're absolutely crazy, and that video is all the proof you need. I want to take a step back from the Aeroscreen in the comments, though, just to focus on something else before I get into really answering the question here. Fernando Alonso clearly was never serious about the Indy 500. Can we just make that clear, get that out of the way?
Yep.
He had a great run in his debut in 2017. But if you listen to Alexander Rossi, actually his teammate at the time, he was just on Formula One's Beyond the Grid podcast, and he made it clear that, give Fernando Alonso all the credit in the world. He did a great job picking up the series and learning the car super quickly. But the Andretti Honda-powered cars that year were pretty much OP. They won the race with Takuma Sato. They won the race the previous year with Rossi. Had Rossi run out of fuel, Carlos Munoz would have been right there to clean it up and win the race for Andretti anyway. They had a lot of power in those cars, and that played no small role in allowing Alonso to have as good of a run as he had. So it was almost too good to be true for him in his debut race. Goes back to McLaren with a new Renault power unit, has a slightly better F1 season, and then in 2019 he comes back. We all know what happened then. It was an absolute embarrassment for McLaren. They were humiliated. They should have been humiliated. It was up there with Penske in 95, with Andretti in 2011. It was one of the biggest failures for a global motorsports giant, as Lee Diffie put it, to be bumped out of the Indy 500 by Juncos Racing of all teams. And take no credit away from them. They did a phenomenal job getting their road course backup car ready and suited to the oval spec in order to do that. But it is still a situation that McLaren and Alonso never should have been in. 2020, he comes back. He runs, I think he said it was 21st Kobe. He's just kind of mediocre. He's there. He's not really being talked about. The Triple Crown was always on offer, but we never really viewed him as a major storyline or a major contender. I think I saw some people on social media today even saying that they forgot that he came back. It was a very forgettable run after the DNQ, which everybody remembers, of course. And now he's back in Formula One, and he's with an Alpine team that is on their best day, the class of the midfield. He's not going to win a third world championship over there. I don't know why, if he were serious about the Triple Crown, if he were serious about the Indy 500, he'd be back in Formula One at the age of 40 years old when he has nothing left to prove there. He's a two-time world champion. And for all the controversy of Oscar Piastri not having a seat on the F1 grid this year, the reigning F2 champion who dominated his way to a championship last year, there's no excuse for him not to be on the grid. He's the reserve driver at Alpine. So if you want to talk about why Piastri isn't on the grid this season in 2022, you look at the Alpine team themselves, who's taking up one of those Alpine seats? It's Fernando Alonso, a guy who you could argue has maybe overstayed his welcome in Formula One. And for reasons, spanning the entire motorsports community, it would be so incredible for him to win the Triple Crown. What's he doing in Formula One when he could be back here in IndyCar, running a full season, running the Indianapolis 500, getting ready for the race, to prepare for the race by running the full season in the full series? So I have some problems with Fernando Alonso from the get-go in terms of where he is in his career right now. And then he makes these comments. And like I said, the comments, there's no sugarcoating it. It is pure insanity to blame the Aeroscreen for why you don't want to come back. The Aeroscreen is the single greatest safety innovation of the last decade. It's up there with the safer barrier. It's up there with the Hans device. This was the last major safety innovation that needed to happen in the world of open wheel racing. The Halo in Formula One, the Aeroscreen in IndyCar, it has already paid for itself. It has already saved lives. And Kobe, you brought up the late, great Justin Wilson. Stephen Wilson is in the Indianapolis 500 this year. I wonder what Stephen Wilson thinks of Fernando Alonso's comments today, knowing that if the Aeroscreen had been on Justin Wilson's car, there's a good chance he'd still be with us today. What does Roman Grosjean think of Fernando Alonso's comments, knowing that the Halo saved his life in Bahrain in 2020 when he had that massive accident? And I think we really have to drive the point home for people here. We've been talking on this show all week about Jimmy Johnson, how strong he looks, the fact that he's in IndyCar. It's a surreal experience for all of us as fans who get to watch it. It's great for motorsports fans across the world to see a 7-time NASCAR champion going for something that only Foyt and Andretti have done, trying to win the Indy 500 on top of the Daytona 500. Jimmy Johnson would not be in the race this year. He might not even be in the series to begin with if the Aeroscreen were not on these cars. The Aeroscreen is something that convinced Jimmy Johnson to give the series a try and specifically to give the ovals a try, we would not be having this conversation about Jimmy right now if it weren't for the Aeroscreen. So for Fernando Alonso to use this as an excuse, I don't know if his ego is just so hurt that he failed to qualify 3 years ago or whatever the case may be. But, it's probably going to sound harsh, but we have to be real and honest with ourselves here. To use this as an excuse for not wanting to come back is just pathetic. There's no other way to put it.
If Fernando Alonso doesn't want to run the Indy 500 and stick with Formula One, he doesn't have to run the Indy 500. Plain and simple.
I don't know what Fernando Alonso's been smoking. I really don't. If it wasn't for the halo, Fernando Alonso would probably be facing charges for killing Charles Leclerc in 2018 at Spa when he jumped over the top of him. And even Fernando at the time said, thank God the halo was there to protect Charles. What is he talking about? Honestly, the Aeroscreen, we even saw last year at the 500 when Ray Hall's tyre came off and bounced off the screen of one of the drivers as well. We all said then, that's it. It ended the debate for everything now. The Aeroscreen's done its job. It's better than the halo. Formula One looking at introducing the Aeroscreen in 2026 to replace the halo because it's better. They just got to work out the temperatures as well and keep the drivers cool as well. Yes, the halo is good, but the Aeroscreen is better. Fernando, I think, is, as you said, Ben, he's trying to give an excuse as to why he's not back at the 500. The real reason is that he's done. I completely forgot he was back in 2020, which I think is the right point. I remember he came back and he looked so thin as well, and we were all worried about him. But yeah, he had a pretty pathetic race further back. This weekend is his home race in Spain. But it was a really, really, really bad excuse and really poor taste. The one thing as a racing driver you don't do is criticize safety measures. That's the one thing you never do, because it's just a bad omen. It's like drivers with traditions as well, like lucky underwear and things like that. You don't criticize safety because it comes back on you. You'll have a crash and then it could affect you. It's bad luck. So Fernando's dicing with the racing god luck as well, and he's just insulting everybody who's been saved by it. And I'm trying to think as well of if Fernando's had a crash apart from that one in Spa where the halo would have been a help to him. Sadly, I can't because he's only been back a season or two. But I can't think of one on the top of my head.
You can go with Australia in 2016.
Yeah, he didn't have it then, did he? But he would have, if he had it, it would have helped him a lot. Yeah, and it
would have made us less concerned as we were watching it.
Precisely, yeah. I think that's the thing. And he probably wouldn't have had dislocated ribs. But he was watching same as us in that race when Grosjean went through the wall. Why is he questioning it? If it wasn't for the halo, Grosjean, the medical people said himself, he would have been decapitated because the sharpness, the razor sharpness of the barrier would have gone right there and it would have cut his head clean off. In fact, one of the medical people said. So that halo acted like the jaws of life and just break through, and it split the car in half, did exactly what it needed to do, and Grosjean's still with us. And it's silly. Don't question safety. It'll come back on you in the future. And Joe Samiego's there saying, yeah, agree with Ben, Adam and Joshua. Ridiculous comment from Fernando. Another example of his attitude. Yeah, Fernando, when he's not winning, is a bit like every racing driver, stuck up. Difficult to get comments out of.
There you go.
Yes, yeah. And all the safety things as well. You mentioned about NASCAR drivers as well, the safer barriers, hands devices. Dale, he would still be here.
Thank you. I was going to mention that. Thank you, Josh. I'll agree with that.
Fernando, one of his heroes was Dale Earnhardt. Why is he criticizing safer barriers and stuff? I mean, he gets on my nerves, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this tomorrow in the practice sessions as well. I'll have more news tomorrow on it as well.
Josh, you want to talk about a bad omen? You bring up Dale Earnhardt. He went on Fox Sports in 2001 during Daytona 500 practice and was talking about how his open-face helmet was the safest helmet in NASCAR. Now, I don't know that the open-face helmet versus the closed-face helmet would have made a difference in saving his life. I think, obviously, he needed a Hans device and safer barriers, and all those would have gone a long way as well. But, it is interesting to look back on that in light of what happened to him on February 18th, 2001, and think to yourself, it's not a good feeling.
Yeah, you don't do it. It's like Ayrton Senna, day before he crashed as well. Sid Watkins said to him, why don't you don't race tomorrow, and I won't be here tomorrow, and we'll go fishing. And what happened the next day? He crashed because he was thinking about it. He was questioning the safety measures. He was questioning why here. Drivers have a habit of, if they start questioning or they play with fate, they crash, and it's just because it's not hardwired into them, but it's like the concentration's not 100%. So they've got to be careful. I'm very superstitious and things like that, in terms of the fact is that it's happened too much of the coincidences in motorsport. And you saw Gilles Bianchi was the last one I can remember as well, where he was interviewed during the red flag saying that I don't think we should restart, the weather's a bit bad out there, and as well. And the last time we saw him, he was cleaning his helmet before getting back in the car. And I just thought to myself, is like, that's like, it was ridiculous. He was saying that we shouldn't restart, and he was the one who got injured. You don't tempt fate. You don't do it. And Fernando's now tempting fate. And to be honest with you, it's put a bit of nerves on me for this weekend, with it being the Spanish Grand Prix. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. But yeah, I think the drivers won't be too happy with him either. And to wrap up my little segment, what Fernando has done now is not only alienate all IndyCar fans. I think what he's done is akin to having orange juice instead of milk. He's really, really angered everyone now, and he will never be welcome back, ever.